$300 million movie,
huge movie.
And so thank God I was just young and dumb and didn't see anything else in front of me, but I'm going to get this job done.
Thanks, guys, for joining us on the Elation Podcast today. We're here with Jason Waggenspack.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So I know we know each other a little bit, but it's time to get to know each other a little better.
Sure.
Where are you from? Let's tell a little bit about your origin story.
I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So grew up there, went to, Catholic High and LSU like everybody does. It's from Baton Rouge. I was there for a couple of years, though, and I ran off to New York. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to get into film. Really thought I'd find an inspiration there where I had some family and some resources.
Well, I was going to say, what made you think New York is where I want to be?
Well, really, it was family. And then also I was playing basketball with a good buddy of mine at LSU, and he had graduated a little earlier than me and was like, I'm going to go to New York. I feel like I want to get into film and feel like New York's a great opportunity. And I was actually acting in one of his movies. And I was like, you know what? It's just not happening for me here in Baton Rouge. We don't have a film program. There's really nothing inspiring.
Right.
And again, like I said, I had family. So I said, I'll venture off with you. So I decided to go with him and, went to New York for a couple of years.
I got you. Well, what did you do up there?
Well, I studied acting. I went to a starving actors college called HB Studios. It was started by Robert De Niro. And I really thought I had this acting bug. Like I was like, I figured I'm a tall, good looking guy. I used to have this full head of hair, which you can't see anymore. I was a bit egotistical in that respect and wanted to get into the modeling scene and all that stupid stuff.
All of us creatives are a little bit like that.
But what I didn't recognize was I didn't really want to be the story. I actually wanted to tell the story. And so when I actually saw the process, and with my roommate, my friend Brian, who I was up there with, he was editing, he was directing, he was writing all the scripts. It's like, this is where it's at. I wanted to really get into the meat of telling great stories. And so that's where I was more inspired.
Absolutely. Well, it's little funny story about my family with the same thought process. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, my grandfather and Daryl Berger had bought Canal Place, and they were doing the grand opening, the ribbon cutting. And I was there at the ribbon cutting and all that stuff. And then, a couple of days afterwards, I see the news article about it. And there's the big picture in the front page news. And Daryl Berger's speaking at the podium. And in the picture, my grandfather is in the background shaking the mayor's hand. And I thought to myself, that's the guy I want to be. I don't want to be the guy at the podium. I want to be the guy shaking the mayor's hand. So similar thought process.
Good.
So when did you decide to come back to New Orleans in a sense? Because I always say New Orleans is a hard place to leave. Mm-hmm. I know, Baton Rouge is similar in the same feeling. So when did you decide to come home and start building something here?
Well, it's a good point. Here in Louisiana, we have something that's very unique, which is we have this culture, we have this camaraderie, we have this sense that everybody's together. We're all fighting for each other.
Absolutely.
And so I did, I come from a very large family, so I did essentially think that I would eventually come back home. When I was in New York, I was having trouble, trying to find a college that I could really study film. It was going to cost me an arm and a leg and a firstborn child. It was ridiculous, like $30,000 a semester to go to NYU. I was like, it's just not going to happen. And so I started looking around, and the only school in the area that was really, well thought of was UNO. Mm-hmm. And so I applied for UNO. I got into UNO. I came back home. And I actually thought I was going to be at UNO for, my 3 or 4 years, and then I was going to take off to LA, and that's where my career was going to start. But when I moved back in 2003, the film industry was really starting to bustle. And so that's actually when we began the change of the program in 2002, where we made it more of a full-fledged tax incentive that was attracting more productions, which, by the way, we were the first state to ever put that in place. Now there's 38 states, funny enough, that have that program in place. So it's really started to bustle, and I was in school. Katrina hit. I actually had to go to LSU for a semester, and I started connecting into my entrepreneurial spirit. I helped a good buddy of mine get his security company up off the ground, and it's funny because that security company we got a detail on Deja Vu. And so that was a bit of a connection there. I started meeting some people from the movie industry, and I was always talking about, how this is where I wanted to be. This is the place I wanted to be in, and I wanted to be a producer. And so it just kind of ran from there. I began the network and kind of worked my way up and found my spot here in New Orleans.
It's funny how a security company helped you lead your way into what you actually wanted to do. I tell people all the time, I was like, just because it might not be the opportunity you want in front of you, take any opportunity, because that always leads to something.
Well, it's that, and it's people don't try enough things and fail at them to figure out what it is that they really and truly aspire to be.
Right.
So 100% agree with that statement. It's really funny, it's the things that you don't recognize that will send you down a path that potentially will get you on the goal that you're actually succeeding or want to succeed in.
100%.
And so, the first movie I ever worked on was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Wow.
Right, I was an intern. And I'm literally working at Cochon Restaurant, which had just opened. I was there for a year, followed the whole team over from the restaurant I worked at previously to Katrina. And one of the busboys, his mom was in extras casting and needed some help and was like, hey, they're looking for interns to come help. I know you're in the film industry. And I was like, yeah. And I applied. And when I applied, they looked at my resume and what all I had done. They're like, well, we don't want to put you in casting. I think we want to put you, assisting the producers, become a PA in the office and help them out. And so I immediately gravitated to that and was just, I just worked my butt off. I just sat in there and was like, I'll do anything I need to do. Who do I need to meet?
Right.
Here's what I want to learn. Here's what I'm interested in.
What do I need to tape down?
Right.
Anything.
What meeting do I need to sit in?
Right. Where do I need to hold? Yeah.
I was just hungry. I was also a little older than everybody else. I kind of had my time where between LSU and UNO to really kind of figure out what I wanted to do. So I was aggressive at that respect. So.
Right, 100%. Well, and you were a little more focused on the future, I guess you can say. Well, that's awesome. I mean, you never truly know where that opportunity will come from.
That's true.
So just keep working, I guess, is the best the best advice you can give. Well, so Benjamin Button was your first film. Where did that lead you next to? What was your next segment?
Well, it's interesting because I was at UNO, as I mentioned. I got this internship. And then my professor at UNO, she and her husband, Glenn Petrie, who's a legend here. He's a Cajun legend making Cajun movies. They had taken on a project to produce this French movie called Cigarettes and Nylon, which is the strange name. Anyway, so it was a made-for-TV French movie that had come down here. And they, noticed what I had done. They really enjoyed my work ethic in school. And they were like, look, we need a location manager for this low budget feature we're doing. Why don't you come in and help us do that? And I was like, great, I don't know what I'm doing, but happy to dive in and do it. And I knocked it out of the park. I had a blast with it.
Right.
It was all about communication and connection points. And I work really well with that. And I did great. And from that, they recommended me for, a couple of other shows. And next thing you know, I'm working on a show called Red, with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman as a location scout and location assistant. And then I literally worked almost every single movie from that point forward, And so I was working on Stolen with Nicolas Cage and, The Host. And I was working on Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn. And then I became a manager and was working on Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, which took me to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which brought me into, the Terminator Genesis movie, which really culminated to where I am today, which is starting the studio in Chalmette, Louisiana, where I had found a space that we put Terminator Genesis in.
Right. Well, so and that's just a list of crazy movies, honestly, to be a part of. And it's funny because I don't think most people realize that those serious movies are being filmed down here.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people realize that the film industry had adopted to New Orleans, but I don't think everybody really understands that the amount of money that these companies are spending in New Orleans.
But it's not only that.
In Louisiana, I should say, not even New Orleans.
Yeah, it's all over the state. But I think people don't really understand the rich history we have here. I mean, the very first movie theater in the state of Louisiana, in the United States, was in the state of Louisiana in New Orleans off Canal Street in 1896.
Right.
All right. They have a big plaque there that says first ever movie theater in the U.S. And so that rich history is also brought in the mere fact that, we've had a rich history of blockbuster films here. In 1918, Tarzan of the Apes was filmed in Morgan City, Louisiana.
Right.
So we've done over 3,000 major motion pictures in, over 100 years here. Obviously, that has ramped up since we created an incentive, to bring film in here. But you're right. We at our peak, we're at almost $1 billion of annual revenue that comes into the state from the film industry. 350 million of that goes directly to local payroll. So we hire a lot of local residents. We built a massive crew base. There's over 10,000 jobs that are provided annually by the film industry. And then obviously, it's really become a source of workforce development and education. So there's 18 higher education institutions now. When I went to school 20 years ago, there was one. Right. Now there's 18 that are teaching digital media and film. So it's really amazing to see the growth.
Well, it's become a large part of the state's budget too, and state's income that's actually coming in. So it should be very, very important for the state moving forward. Building out the Ranch Studios, what was your thought process on how big you wanted to be, and I guess some of the technology that you wanted to bring in to help make it one of the premier spots in the country?
Well, I as a location manager saw that there was a lack of infrastructure, because we were taking over old warehouses, abandoned buildings, and really just building sets inside of them. And so you didn't have a lot of investment. And so when I found an old Lowe's in Chalmette, Louisiana, that had literally been built up right after Katrina and shut down because none of the insurance came to that area, unfortunately, for 7 or 8 years, it was this beautiful, diamond in the rough that we ended up utilizing and put 16 interior sets in this massive 150,000 square foot building, and built a bunch of exterior sets where, Arnold Schwarzenegger's running around with a, machine gun, killing off of all the other Terminators. I was going to say Aliens, but that's a different movie. But anyway, it struck a chord, and I decided to partner with the landowner and the adjacent property with Sidney Torres, and we co-founded the ranch. But the idea was, how do we provide something that is beyond the means of what you see in a purpose-built state-of-the-art facility, because we're a rehab building. We took over 2 former blighted big box stores and converted them into an economic engine in a parish that obviously had seen a lot of economic, travesty with Katrina.
Absolutely.
And so the dream really, was more about how do I make it available not only to big productions, but how do I take those big productions and really find a way to connect them to the community and what we're trying to drive? I'm a filmmaker at heart. I'm a storyteller.
Right.
And I still have a company called Neutral Ground Films where we develop intellectual property. And so my true first vision was, how do I take my intellectual property and put them inside my own boxes? How do I become the Lionsgate of Louisiana?
Right.
How do I start producing my own stuff? But the business it just took off. Like I couldn't stop the avalanche of activity that was coming in. And so what we did is we took all of our profits and poured them back into the property.
Right.
And so every time a new project would come, it was, hey, what do we need? Oh, we need LED lights? Perfect. Got that.
Right.
What do we need? More power? Done. We need more soundproofing? Done. So we would continue to work with each of the producers. And so being a former location manager was easy for me to be able to have great conversations and really see what my clients needed before they showed up.
Yeah, well, you understood the business and what they were looking for and things that they needed before they even got there.
And that's what's really created, a great opportunity for us to branch out and to become a great known brand. Not only did we, really bring in and look at how we were going to develop the brand, develop the marketing plan, but we really great service. We became the Ritz-Carlton, we felt like, to the film industry around here. And we tried to see everybody's needs, as I mentioned, ahead of time. And it resonated so well that they became our brand ambassadors. They were out talking about, hey, have you filmed at this place? I mean, it may have some columns in the spaces, but there are massive spaces here. They've done great work. And the people there are fantastic. And it's going a long way.
Hospitality is something that is embedded in us, I feel like, I don't know if it's Louisianians, but something between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. We feel like we need to take in people, feed them, make them feel good, make them have a party, and leave happy.
Well, New Orleans & Company has kind of said it best for the last couple of years, but their new slogan is built to host.
Right.
And they're absolutely right. We love to host. I love to throw a party. That's what I love doing when I have friends come in all the time, is just showing them a good time. And you're right. Hospitality goes, second to none here in this state of Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I feel like the entire country has lost after COVID. So even having a little bit of hospitality, I feel like nowadays sets you apart.
Yeah, I agree.
So you guys have been a beacon for Chalmette then. You've truly helped that parish build something that they never thought they were going to be a part of.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's talk a little bit about the outreach to the community and some of the education things.
Sure.
What do you feel like moving forward, education needs to be ramped up to for technology to teach? Because there's a lot of things that have happened so quick with AI and with some of the LED walls and some of the way that we're shooting now. I don't know if they're necessarily teaching that in school. So what would you feel like education needs to go next to truly help?
Well, it's funny, I'm your typical gear guy, but I love tech. So I love playing with cameras, love getting and editing machines, love what you talked about with LEDs and AI. I'm always trying to stay in the forefront of what's coming next. And so I did get into LED wall technology. I feel like before all my competitors did. So 3 and 4 years ago, I was really paying close attention to it. We were the first person to bring a studio to bring a vendor client that provided LED services. And we were doing a lot of process LED work, which means you take a car, put it on a gimbal, and then build LED walls around it to allow for the environment to be more controlled by the director and the actor. And so we were doing a lot of that work and really trying to educate our client base on LED technology, because a lot of people didn't know how to use it. They'd seen The Mandalorian and maybe some of the backdrops that they had done, but that was on a massive scale. And most people didn't understand how, to interact with the walls. What can the walls do? What's what is the light emittancy of each of them? And how can I use that in future projects? And so now that education has really begun to build. And to your point, actually LSU has invested 2 years ago. They invested in their own LED wall, and they're teaching their own LED content there, how to deal with the software, how to deal with the hardware, and then how to actually deal with the creative of the use of that. So like Jaden Daniels last year with his Heisman Trophy award ceremony at LSU, you saw a lot of promos of him. That was all done on an LED wall at LSU, which is quite impressive.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, Loyola right now has just got a grant from the state. They're going to start doing their own program as well. And so you're going to see a lot more of those opportunities. Now with the AI of things, we all are sitting back really trying to understand the process by which AI is really going to take over, because, it's as if we just brought the calculator out, and when you were with the abacus, before, and you were like, well, why would I use this, and how do I use this? And it's gonna take over all these people's jobs, and I don't necessarily look at it that way. It's a sort of a knee-jerk reaction the industry has had immediately, because it is hard to fathom how to use it currently. But I look at it as a positive. I am a bit of an optimistic person, but I look at it as us shrinking the timelines on how we make content now, so now we can make more. And so that's really how I see AI kind of building. It's
time efficiency that definitely time. Money is time. Time costs money. I said the same thing. Actually, I used the calculator excuse recently. I was talking to somebody, and I said, once calculators came out, everybody stopped doing math, but they also can understand bigger numbers and do more math through the calculator. They just don't physically do it. And it's the same situation with AI and some of the text that's coming up with the music stuff. You may no longer physically do it, and it may take that out of your life, but then you'll be able to do 2 or 3 times more of that with that tool.
Completely.
So
agree.
it's just about how you use it, when you use it, and what you learn about it. I mean, truly that sets you apart.
So the one thing you just got to make sure you're educating people on is, get involved in it.
Right.
Understand how it works. Don't sit back and, completely shun what it is that's in front of you that is inevitably going to take over. It's going to take over us in our education, in law firms, in medical. It's going to take over everything before you see, before you know it. All of this is going to be seen in front of every single thing that you do, but it is only going to enhance our lives.
Right.
You can't be afraid of that. You just have to embrace it and allow for your creative juices, which the AI engine cannot do, to be the beacon of how it is that you're going to move forward and be successful.
Well, and take that time that you're given and not do something lazy with it. Because I feel like that's also what's going to happen too, is you're going to get a lot of laziness, and people aren't going to be necessarily doing those trivial tasks that you need to do every day, but then they just sit on stuff and watch TV. So that's the part you got to do. You got to get off.
Well, we don't want them to not watch TV, because in my industry,
watch TV at a good time. Well, tell us a little bit about being honored by Lieutenant Governor here in Louisiana. What did that mean for you?
Sure. Lieutenant Governor honored me with Champion of Tourism a couple of years back. I've been working with Lieutenant Governor, since I got into this industry. He's been a champion, obviously, of the state. And he's really a champion of film. He really sees the benefits of film. He really understands how we attract people to the state of Louisiana through film and television. And
well, there's so many looks that we can give them with just the different backgrounds and things. I mean, it truly can be anything.
We have a massive diversity of locations, and we have small town looks. We have obviously big city looks. We have infinite horizons, which people don't realize that Lake Pontchartrain looks like the sea. I mean, I put a 178-foot yacht out there for Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, and it looked like they were in, the Atlantic Ocean. And so, again, the Lieutenant Governor has really pushed how we can drive more projects and more diversity of projects to come to the state. But what we've done now in this new organization that we've rebranded in Film Louisiana is we've tried to put our marketing mind forward, and we've done a really great job of sourcing how films have affected the state of Louisiana. So most recently, a movie called Hitman that just came out on Netflix. And it was the #1 movie in the month of May. It was huge. It was, filmed here. It was set here. Had key New Orleans, characters with an NOPD officer and a UNO professor. A lot of students that were involved in that. But it garnered a massive following, and so we did a study on that, and it showed that 686 million click-throughs in that month's time were all about this movie and the New Orleans, and Louisiana themes that were a part of each of those things. And that garnered about a $1.6 million ad equivalency. So that means that you had to take $1.6 million, paid an ad agency to go out and push what you were trying to display or what you were trying to message about the state of Louisiana.
Organically.
And we got it organically from the film program here in the state of Louisiana that allowed for that opportunity to bolster what it is that we have and we can obviously showcase in the state of Louisiana.
So that works great. Yeah, that works great for the state. I mean, you can't pay. I mean, you really can, but it's the organic part of it is never the same as paying. When you pay for advertising, people understand you paid for it. That organic stuff, I feel like it always connects more.
Well, that I think right now is really taken over our industry. Like you're starting to recognize that people don't want to be sold something all the time.
Right.
We would rather be told a story. We would rather understand who each other are.
Right.
Have a podcast like we're having today to understand me and you a little bit better.
Right.
It's funny. You asked me earlier, how I got into this industry, and I'm just give you an anecdotal story that goes back to what we're talking about. I fell in love with storytelling when I started watching VH1's Behind the Music.
Okay.
And so it has to do with your industry, which is a lot more about music.
Right.
Because I loved music. I came from a background of basketball, so I loved R&B and rap.
Right.
But I also had all my friends that were into heavy metal, and we were into hard rock, and and then my dad was into sort of the James Taylors of the world.
Right.
So I had all these different types of music that came to me. But when I started watching VH1 Behind the Music and they started talking about why they came up with the song and all of the lyrics that went to that song and the reason why they made a video in this way, it really resonated like, oh, I understand the story behind what it is that I actually love listening to.
Right. And
it made me appreciate storytelling so much.
Well, and it's the human particles, right? I mean, those storytellers, and VH1 Storytellers was big in my life too. I mean, I can't tell you how many things I learned and looked at artists differently and respected things more.
Yeah.
And you understand that it's less of a creative process and more of appreciation for your own experiences and the storytelling that they're telling in their songs. So it brings a whole different element to music. So that's awesome.
Yeah, but it goes back to the organic piece of what you're talking about. I would rather understand more about the person behind the creative and then understand more of how they came to the point of delivering the creative that makes me appreciate it so much more.
Right.
So, how did you get to this point? Oh, I overcame this triumph.
Right.
Or this traumatic thing happened in my life that made me want to tell this.
Right. Smoke on the water after watching the barge burn down. That's what they come, things like that. You just don't, you don't necessarily understand in the song, but then it truly connects things in life, I feel like. But that's awesome. Well, what would you say would be your hardest movie that you worked on?
Oh, the most difficult movie I worked on was definitely Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, although it was also the most rewarding.
Okay.
So, it was the largest challenge I'd ever taken on. I'd coming off Percy Jackson, The Sea of Monsters, which, I'd worked on Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn with a producer named Bill Bannerman, and Bill was just a fantastic human being, but he looked at me and he was like, hey, I got a little job for you, this little job. We're going to come in town. We need to do this abandoned amusement park for like 3 days. Do you think you can handle it? And I was like, yeah, I've done several movies over there. He knew I knew it very well. And so that 3 days expanded to like 18 days. And so it became like a full location manager's gig. And then they also wanted to do, the work in the Lake Pontchartrain. So it became several locations, and I knocked it out of the park for him. And Bill was like, I got another movie I want to recommend for you. I hope you can be up for the gig or want to take on this challenge. And he recommended me to an executive producer who had come in and was like, I want to do Dawn of the Planet of the Apes in downtown New Orleans. And I was like, great. I didn't even think twice. Going to do it. Great. Whatever you need. Huge movie. $300 million movie.
Huge movie.
And so thank God I was just young and dumb and didn't see anything else in front of me. But I'm going to get this job done. It didn't put any anxiety in the back of my mind until afterwards, funny enough. But it was very challenging because I had a massive amount of locations. I think we had 40 locations
Wow.
that I had to secure. And one of them was downtown New Orleans at Rampart and Tulane, which was a major intersection.
Yeah.
And we needed to take over all 4 of the buildings in that area. We had to build the human colony right there at this empty, at the time, grass lot, which is now a parking lot.
Right.
And we had to take it over for 6 weeks. And before that, I obviously had to go out in multiple months and prep everything.
Right.
So I was taking over streets and then closed it down for a full 3 weeks to actually film. But 6 weeks, we had like partial closures all over the place while we built. And so I had to deal with the city. I had to deal with, all the residents. I had to deal with all the businesses in the area. And it was a massive challenge. It was quite an undertaking. And it was probably like I said, the most stressful and hardest job I've ever done. But after seeing it come out and the rewarding factor of how well the movie did was just a big, I was excited. It was really a massive pat on my back to get that done.
Well, just knowing the industry and knowing a little bit about what you do, I could tell you that it's one of the most integral parts of shooting a film is location.
Yeah.
Because you can't make it look the way you want it to look. You can't. If you can't give that feel that the director or the producer has in their head, the things aren't going to work out properly.
Yeah. We're the true left brain, right brain people on the set because we're given a script. We're usually first to leave and last to leave. I mean, first to get there and last to leave. Sorry. They send us a script very early on. They hire us usually first to go scout and figure out all the stuff. Can I make it in Louisiana?
Right.
Yes. Okay, then let's go hire the crew. But we have to actually read the script and give them the creative that we think is fitting for a director's vision,
right,
to then sell them on how we're going to do the film in this area. And once you do that, then you're in logistics mode.
Right.
Oh, I got to go talk to the city. I got to secure, as I mentioned, each and every one of these locations. I got to make sure that the streets are closed. I got to make sure you got a place to go to the bathroom. I got to make sure you got a place to park. Got to make sure that we're in and out. Yep. Security, all of it. And then we have to clean it all up. We have to put it back better than we found it. And then obviously wait for the next film. So you're right. It is... it's an undertaking to be in locations, but you get all of the worlds. You get everything
100%,
included. So.
100%. Well, and you, like you said, it's left and right brain. So you have to be creative, but then you also have to be business minded and understand that the people that you have to talk to do the permits and to get the businesses in and the public around, they're not necessarily creatives, and they're not even thinking about that side.
Yeah. So
you got to talk to them in a different world.
You got to get them excited.
You got to get them excited, right? Yeah. And I will say, I feel like LA was very business minded in a sense of shooting. So like if you're going to shoot a music video and you just want to go ask the corner store to shoot in the parking lot, you need a permit. Mm-hmm. Like everybody understands it costs money. Mm-hmm. They want their money and you better get a permit. Down here, I feel like, especially for independents, I feel like you can pop up, ask a business guy or the owner of a location and go ahead, shoot for a second. Like they have that a little bit of excitement in them because it's not something that happens every day.
Yeah,
LA, people walk in all kinds of places every day to try to shoot.
Yeah, I'm sure they got worn out over 100 years of filmmaking in Los Angeles.
Sure.
So
I'm sure.
They got to understand the business, the back end quite a bit. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, what would be your top 5 movies of all time?
Oh, wow. Well, look, my favorite movie of all time is Dead Poets Society. Oh, Captain, My Captain, Suck the Marrow Out of Life.
Right.
That was a big inspiration for me, just as a storyteller and just as a young upstart coming up, really enjoying movies and really getting into the drama of things. I love that movie. Everybody talks about Shawshank Redemption, but I love Shawshank Redemption. You also got to go back to some fun movies. I mean, Goonies is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Absolutely.
I just watched it with my kids outside, about a month ago in my backyard. It's just an awesome movie. And, I guess you really kind of get into the fodder after that of top 5. Some of the stuff that I worked on, like I said, I loved Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
Mostly because, again, you get the whole background. You get everything that you put into and you appreciate the story more in ways that it puts out. So I gave you 4. I don't know if I'm going to give you 5 since there's so many others that are out there, but those are generally my top movies. So,
I got you. Yeah, no, you definitely do get more invested in a movie. I feel like when you're a part of it and you understand the story. I mean, the couple short films that I did in LA and I scored and did all the sound design for, I feel like I wouldn't have been able to do the sound design, the scoring, if I wasn't there every day on set, watching the story take place, watching how the actors adapted to it, watching what they said, some of the creative changes and things that happened. And then I truly understood the director's vision at the time. And then I went to go back and just did it in one shot because I understood the vision. So I feel like you do that, you really get into the story a little more, you know?
Well, I'll give you one more that you're talking, just reminded me of one, and it goes into technology. But I absolutely love 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right.
Because it was ahead of its time. Nobody understood how he did what he did when he released that movie in the late 60s. In the late 60s. Unbelievable what he did. And so, anyway, that would be one of the top.
Now, I think that's also one of the best things about film industry is it always pushes the boundary. You know, there's enough money in there to go experiment. So let's see what new camera tricks we can come up with, or a whole new technology that ends up, you know, being used for 10, 12 years afterwards, you know. And James Cameron and some of those guys, man, they're true inventors, if not just film producers.
Oh, totally agree.
So, but that's awesome. Well, I like to ask everybody at the end, what brings elation to you in your life? Well,
I mean, my family. I love my two daughters. I've got my little girl dad bracelets here that my daughters make for me, and my wife. My family's my rock. They have been. I moved back from New York to Louisiana, and my wife and I, got together, and that was it. Like, I literally came back to start my career and start my family, and she's been with me along this crazy ride because I literally told her, like, I got to finish some school. I got to go and make a mark in this industry, and I'm gonna be working long hours. So if you're willing to stick with me, I have a feeling we'll get somewhere someday. And I'm not finished going somewhere for sure. I have a lot of goals ahead of me. But she has been that guide. She's been that North Star to point me in the right direction. Hey, you're doing this wrong. Hey, you need to.
It's so important as a creative to have that rock.
Yeah.
Because, we are at the whim of our industry, at the whim of our creative juices, and to be able to go home and understand the stability and things that they bring in your life calms everything else down, I feel like, and then allows space for you to be creative. So very important. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, love that. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your socials for the ranch and where people can find the studios and look you up?
Sure. You can go to wearetheranch.com to go find anything you want to know about the ranch. You can hashtag #WeAreTheRanch, and you can find just about anything on any social. So that's where you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. But also with the new association, you can go to filmlouisiana.com if you want to learn anything about the stats that we talked about today. We also give great stories of small communities that have been affected by film all over the state of Louisiana. And then obviously giving a lot of updates on what's happening legislatively. And then you can follow on any of the socials with hashtag FilmLouisiana and come find out more information.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
and thank you guys for joining us on the Elation Podcast, where we find exhilarating euphoria through creation and collaboration.